I thought about giving this video a real clickbaity title like Bible Hack You Won't Believe, or Revolutionize Your Study of the Bible in 5 Easy Steps, or some other obnoxious title that would get you to click. I probably should have done that because we can always use the views. In fact, before we get into this video, if you appreciate this channel, if you like our Bible reviews, if you like our video teaching resources, if you like our Bible study series, if you like Superhero Seminary, if you want to support this ministry and help us to equip, engage, and empower people all over the world, the best way you can do that is by clicking the subscribe button down below, clicking like, and then sharing this video if you find it helpful. If I were an obnoxious YouTuber, I'd say smash the like button. Don't smash anything. Just give us a like if you like it. If not, no worries. But enough promotionals for the ministry and the channel. Again, it really helps us if you click the little like button. Okay, for real. I want to show you a method that I actually use when I'm getting ready to teach through or study through a book of the Bible. All you need is an internet connection and the ability to use a word processor. That's it. I'll show you what I mean. Take a look right here. We're going to go to Bible.com. Super easy to remember. Shouldn't have any problems with it. And we're going to go to Read the Bible Now. Now, you can log in if you have a YouVersion membership, but for what we're needing, we're not going to do that. We're going to use the New American Standard 95 just because I want even John MacArthur to appreciate this Bible study tactic. And let's go to Exodus chapter 1. So here we have the text of Exodus chapter 1. And one of the reasons I chose the New American Standard 95 is because there's not a lot of formatting in it. It's fairly block text, not entirely, but a good bit. Here's what we're going to do. All you have to do is copy all of the text of this chapter. So this is Exodus chapter 1, and we've just highlighted. And now you can either hit Command C or Control C if you're on a PC, or if you're not so tech savvy, just right click on your mouse and copy this. So now this is copied onto our computer, and we're going to go to Microsoft Word, and we're going to open up a blank Word document. And then we're going to paste our text, and here's what we end up with. Pretty unformatted. I'm actually going to take out the few paragraph divisions they've added, and this is what we end up with. What we're going to do is create our very own Reader's Edition, or why am I moving my hand so much? What we're going to do is create our very own Reader's Edition and note-taking / journaling edition that we can use however we want. So we've got our text. Now, depending on how you like to take notes, some people take notes all around the margins. Some people only take notes on one side. I'm just going to show you what I like to do. I personally like to have my notes on one side and my text on the other with a little bit of room for margins. So I'm going to go up here and we're going to mess with the layout. We're going to change the margins. We're going to do custom margins, and the margin on top, an inch, that's not bad. On the bottom, an inch, that's fine. Left, let's do 0.5. I don't need a ton of marginal room on the left, but on the right, I want some pretty wide margins, so I'm going to do 2.5 inches. So when I hit OK, now what this has done is given me a nice wide margin here for note taking, a little bit of margin room on this side if I need it, some on the top if I want to put introductory notes. Again, you can do this however you want. This margin at top is a little big because this font is small, so I'm actually going to make those margins smaller on the top and on the bottom. I'm going to do 1/2 inch margins. I just think that looks nice. Now, if you want to get a little fancier, you can insert a text box, and this will be a space. I'll show you why you would want to do this in just a second. So I'm going to draw a text box, make it a little thinner, boom, right here. Okay. Now, this text box, I don't want it to move. I want it placed right where it is. Maybe I want it to go close to the edge of the paper because this is what I would use for writing notes and whatnot. I want to format it so that it doesn't move. So I'm going to go to Wrap Text, Fix Position on the page. So now when I move the text over here, the box doesn't move with it. If you don't select that, the box will move when you move the text, and it'll be a little annoying. What I also like to do is format this shape and give it a fill color. So I go to Fill, and I want it just a little bit different color than the paper itself. So now this is kind of like a note-taking section. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see what's going on. Okay, this is what you end up with. This chunk of text, the numbers here, if you notice, they're not even superscript. So you could go in and you could actually highlight a number, superscript it, and so you could make the verse numbers look a little nicer. You would just have to go through and do this manually. You can do it as you go. You can do it all at once. There might be a super nerdy Microsoft Word shortcut on how to do this. I just don't know it. Okay, so now all of the verse numbers have been superscripted, so they're not as weird looking on the page. But this is still what we have, this big unformatted chunk of text. Now we come to the study part. And here's what you need to know about Bible translations. Originally, the Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek manuscripts that we have, most of them, the oldest ones at least, they don't have a lot of formatting. Some of them don't even have spaces between the words if we're talking about the New Testament. And so every instance of formatting in your English Bible, paragraph breaks, punctuation, capitalization, all of those things that we just take for granted as English readers, those have all been done by translators or editors. And they're done based on a number of factors, like how thick do we want this Bible to be? How wide do we want the margins to be? How can we save money when we're printing this? Do we want to use large print, small print? Do we want a lot of spaces, single column, double column? These are all things that only Bible nerds really know about. Most of us just read and take for granted. What we're going to do is we're actually going to make some of these decisions ourselves as a way of forcing us to slow down and really think about how is this text, in this case Exodus 1, how is it flowing? What is the author trying to communicate? And how can I see the text, so to speak, on the page? Because what that will do is it will force us to wrestle with the text at a deeper level than we're used to if we were just reading it on the page in a nice, neat, formatted English translation. So here's what we have. Now, these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. They came each one with his household. And then here are the names: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All the persons who came from the loins of Jacob were 70 in number, but Joseph was already in Egypt. So this is what we have to decide. Okay, how are we going to structure this? Now, this is Exodus chapter 1, so we'll go ahead and put chapter 1 up there. And if you wanted to, you could drop this down. You could go here, go to the center, and Exodus. All right, so this is the book of Exodus. Now, we could drop this down and say, okay, here's how the book starts. These are the names of the sons of Israel. So this is going to be a name list. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. That's one group. This semicolon lets us know that that's one grouping. So hit return, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. Here's another grouping. Dan and Naphtali. It's another group. Gad and Asher. That's another grouping. All the persons who came from the loins of Jacob were 70 in number. Now, 70, this word, sometimes we want to be able to see numbers because they'll stick in our minds a little better. So you could change this to 70. And that may help you remember this number because 70 is an important number in the Bible. So that's one thing that I do is when a number is spelled out, I usually turn it into digits so that I can just see it and kind of anchor it in my mind's eye a little bit. So this lets us know there were 70 in number, but Joseph was already in Egypt. This is kind of a parenthetical thought. So the NASB translators have said, we're going to put a comma here, but you could make this parenthetical if you thought that's preserving the flow of the text a little bit better. Joseph was already in Egypt. So it's letting you know, why isn't Joseph mentioned up here? He was a son of Jacob. Well, because he was already in Egypt. So we move on. Next paragraph, Joseph died, and all his brothers and all that generation. So that's letting us know that this is coming to an end and a new thing's beginning. So we would have to say, okay, is this the end of this section? And now this is a new thing? So maybe we'd format it this way. Joseph died. So this would all be one section, one pericope, if you wanted to get technical. I don't even know if I'm using that word right. I don't even know if this will qualify as a pericope. Maybe. Then we move on. But the sons of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly and multiplied and became exceedingly mighty. So the land was filled with them. Now a new king arose over Egypt. So you would go, okay, so this is definitely a new thing, a new section, but maybe this goes with this to contrast the idea of all the brothers dying, everybody here dying, but the sons of Israel, these people, were fruitful and increased greatly and multiplied and became exceedingly mighty, and so the land was filled with them. So this is actually one whole unit of thought, and we decide, okay, let's break it here instead. See, these are the types of decisions that doing this makes you wrestle with. It's not a question of getting it right or wrong or making a polished translation. Well, you're not doing any translation unless you're working with Hebrew, Greek, or Aramaic. It's not the case of producing a fine, polished, finished product. This is just getting you to make these decisions that English Bible translations have already made differently based on who the translators are, of what version you're using. But this is making you have to slow down and ask these questions. How does this fit with this? And what's the context of this? And how does it relate to this? And so this is just a way, again, it's an exercise. It helps you get into the text. So a new king arose over, let's say we like this and we want to keep this as one unit. Now this is a new paragraph. A new king arose over Egypt. He did not know Joseph. He said to his people, so now this is a speech section. What I like to do just to help me is I take all of the speech, the direct speech, and I want to note it in italics. So this just tells me, hey, this is speaking. He's saying this. The king, the Pharaoh, is saying to his people, behold, the people of the sons of Israel, more mightier, blah, blah, blah. So they appointed taskmasters over them to afflict them with hard labor. And they built for Pharaoh storage cities, put them in Ramses. Now there's some confusion here. Who's the they? New American Standard is a fairly literal translation. It tries to shoot for it at least. So it doesn't tell you who the they and the them are. This is where you could go in and say, okay, so they, who is they? Well, his officials. What did they do? Appointed taskmasters over them. Who? The Israelites. To afflict them, the Israelites, with hard labor. And they built for Pharaoh. Well, the taskmasters didn't build. The Israelites built. So you could put a little note here for yourself. Israelites. And that lets you know they, the Israelites, built for Pharaoh storage cities. Right? This is completely optional. You don't have to. You can take this out if you want to keep the text as is and just scribble it in the margin or something. But this is the kind of thing you could do with the digital text. So they afflicted him, but the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied, the more they spread out. So they were in dread of the sons of Israel. And so the Egyptians compelled them to labor rigorously, and they made their lives bitter with hard labor, blah, blah, blah. Verse 15, then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew. So this is a new paragraph, a new situation. So because of all this, because he told them to oppress them because they'd be a threat, then they did this. And because they did this, then the king has to go to the midwives. And here's a little parenthetical thought. Then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives. Now, New American Standard doesn't use modern English vernacular, but if you wanted to do this, you could say, well, this is a parenthetical thought. So he spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shipra and the other was named Puah. That's a parenthetical thought. That's just giving you a little aside into who these women are. And this gets us back to the main point. So he spoke to the midwives and he said, this is just a little parenthesis. So you can mark it with a parenthesis. Then this is what he says. Gives the order to, if it's a girl, let him live. If it's a boy, to put him to death. So that's what he tells him. But the midwives feared God. They didn't do what he said. They let him live. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said to them, and this is what he said. So here's his word. So again, we'll make these italics. That's what he said. And then they answered. So we'll put their words in italics. And he answered him. And then as a result, God was good to the midwives. People multiplied, became very mighty. And because the midwives fear God, he established households for them. Then in response, then Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, and here is the genocidal command once again, every son who is born cast into the Nile, every daughter to keep alive. So here's the section of Exodus chapter 1, and it's all laid out in a way that makes a little better sense than just that block of text. Now, you could go in and say, you know what? I think these names, I'm going to put one on each line because then it more clearly stands out as something resembling a census. And so you may want to lay it out like that. It's totally up to you. These decisions, again, it's not to be definitive. It's to be exploratory. It's to get you asking these questions, which forces you to slow down and to really take in the text instead of doing what sometimes we do. Even the most dedicated readers among us, sometimes we just glaze over the text or our eye skips a line because it's all neat and justified and laid out exactly. We can miss things, but having to go through and make these kind of decisions forces us to pause and reflect. What is the author saying? And more than what is the author saying, how is the author saying it? Because that's huge. Now, this text box, the benefit of having a text box is, let's say you got this exactly how you wanted it. I'm going to pull up one. Here's one that I had done previously on Exodus chapter 1. Let's say you wanted to make this a handout. Let's say you're teaching a Bible study, a small group on Exodus, and you want people to be able to take notes. Well, not everybody's Bibles are published in a way that is note friendly. If you've seen any of our study Bible reviews here at Disciple Dojo, you know we talk about how margins of study Bibles sometimes aren't that great. Some are really good, some aren't so good. If it's double columned versus single column, then you get even less space in the margins. So if you're doing a Bible study, if you're teaching or leading or anything where you're interacting with people, then having something like this that you can hand out will encourage them to be able to take notes, to circle key words, to underline things, to write down reflections. If you wanted to get super fancy, you could even put lines here and then hand it out so that people that have messy handwriting, they have little note-taking spaces. Now, again, you could format this however you want, and that's the beauty of it being digital. You can do with it what you need to do with it. Do you want to keep this just for your own study of the book? Cool, keep it digital. Do you want to have it on an iPad that you can pull up and teach from? Even better. Do you want handouts? Print as many as you want. That's what's so cool about this, is you are creating a journaling / note-taking / study / sentence diagramming Bible text of particular books that you can add to. You can change this. You could say, well, I actually don't think the text should be broken here. I think this is all one section. So you could reformat it, and it's just that easy. Or you could say, I want all of the dialogue to be not just italics, but I want it to be in bold, because then it jumps off the page when somebody's speaking. And this makes it easier to read in a group setting without getting lost. So you could take all of the dialogue, put it in bold, and that would let you know, hey, this is dialogue. Pay attention, read this part out loud. Again, whatever you wanted to do, it's up to you. This is actually the way that I prepare when I'm going to teach through a book of the Bible. I'll give you an example here at Disciple Dojo, our course, Revelation, a guided tour of the apocalypse. You can click right here and do the entire course for free. But if you click right there, there's going to be an option when you get to that page to download the workbook. And if you download the workbook and open it, you're going to come to the book of Revelation. And here is what I've done. I have taken Revelation and I've laid it out in a way that I think preserves the literary flow of the text. Sometimes there are Greek words that are particularly significant, and I want to make sure that we note them when we're going through the text together in the course. So I've put the Greek words not just in red font and in parentheses, but I've actually left them in Greek. Now, if you don't read Greek, you'll have to have someone pronounce it for you, but it's really not that hard. Anyway, you can see what's important and how this is laid out. Whenever there's a quote from the Old Testament, because Revelation quotes the Old Testament all the time, I've put it in bold, and in parentheses, I've given the reference to the Old Testament book so that you can see right here in verse 7, oh, this is a combination of two quotes from Daniel 7 and Zechariah 12, and John's combined them in this opening section of his letter. And then when the Lord speaks, I am the Alpha and the Omega, and then this tripartite phrase, the one who is and who was and who is coming, the all-powerful. By laying it out this way, it's almost like some type of hymn or poem or announcement or proclamation. And so this helps the reader, well, mainly it helps me, but hopefully it helps the reader see the text a little clearer. And then over in the side, these are my notes for when I'm teaching, and these are the notes that are going to be important so that somebody doesn't have to scribble along every single reference or every single word that I mention, especially if it's a Greek word. I've put that in this text box, and they already have this. So people that are taking the course, this is what they're seeing, and then they can add their own notes to it as well. But again, it's all for making the text more accessible, for slowing people down. I'll show you where this really helps. When we get to Revelation 5, there's this doxological, this praise, this worship setting that John is seeing. And so when you have things like them crying out this sevenfold praise of the Lamb, worthy is the Lamb who was slaughtered. Well, we've put it so that you can see these 7 praises that are being laid almost one on top of the other. And it's done in a way that preserves kind of the poetic or the hymnody of this passage, because again, this is a worship setting. So worthy is the Lamb to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and praise, right? That will stick in your mind a little clearer when it's laid out this way than if it were laid out just in one block of text. Being able to see the thing on the page in a way that's different than how it's printed in standard text block format Bibles lets you see it in a new way. It lets you see it in a fresh way. Another thing it lets you do is when numbers are used. So when we get to chapter 7, there's this scene where John is told the number of those who are going to be sealed to preserve him from what he's about to see. And he says, I heard the number of those who were marked, 144,000. And then what he hears is actually an Old Testament military census. In the Bible, this comes from the book of Numbers, but in other places, it's a census of the fighting men of Israel. And so I've structured the text to reflect that. This is what is he seeing. This is a census list. So I've put it as a list format, not spelling out the numbers, not putting them in just block prose format. No, this is a list. That's the genre that we're looking at. And it's really important. And so I've underlined it. That's what he hears. But what he sees when he actually looks, he's heard a military census of the tribes of Israel, but when he turns and looks, what he sees is an enormous crowd that no one could count. After he's just spent all this time counting, then when he actually looks at it, it's this innumerable multitude, and they're singing praises. And there's an important theological message in that for the book of Revelation, which we talk about in the course. But presenting the book, having the book laid out this way for people is very helpful, especially if you're teaching other people, but also just for your own sake. So is this a mind-blowing Bible hack? Is this going to revolutionize? Is this going to change your world? Maybe. I don't know. Probably not. What it is going to do, though, it's going to force you to slow down, to read the text, to ask the question, what is the author saying and how is the author saying it? And then you have it in a digital format that you can continue to add to. What I do is I actually save these. So if I go to save this, then I have a folder, and you can save it as one document. So I could say, this is going to be my Exodus study notes or Exodus journaling Bible. And I could save it just as Exodus. And then every time I do another chapter, I add it to this file. Or you could save each one as chapters. This is going to be Exodus 1. Actually, since it'll be double digits, you should do Exodus 01, and then it'll stay in order. Save it, and then do this again with chapter 2, and then save that one as Exodus 2, and keep a folder that's your Exodus folder. And then you can keep any other commentary notes or study notes, anything else you come across, you can put it in that folder, and then you always have it digitally. So again, with this video, I just wanted to give you a new way to study the Bible. If you've never done it this way, it really does help, especially in appreciating, understanding, and absorbing the flow of the book, the literary flow of the book. Plus, at the end, you build this file that continues to grow as you continue to do this with new chapters, and eventually you may have all 66 books, all however many chapters in all those books. Give it a shot. Tell me what you think. Take a small book of the Bible like Obadiah or 2 John, just something really short. Try this method, drop it in unformatted into whatever translation you use, into a Word document, and then go through and format it. Then when you're done, take your favorite translation or a study Bible or some Bible that you like that's done by professionals and compare it. See, where did they break the paragraph? How did they handle the formatting? You're going to get to know the text in much greater detail than just reading it through in a pre-formatted translation. So I hope this is helpful. If you haven't seen our study Bible reviews, go ahead and click here, and that'll take you to reviews we've done of a couple of dozen study Bibles, and we're continuing to do more as we go. If you wonder who these people are all around me, well, this is our faculty here at Superhero Seminary. If you haven't seen those videos, click right there. It's a really fun playlist, especially if you're a nerd, especially if you're a Bible nerd. Check it out. Look around. If you're new to Disciple Dojo, thanks for watching. And if you like this video, share it with other people. Let us know what you think in the comments if you've tried this method and found it helpful. We'll see you next time.